from the lorries here. No one's travelled from Dubbo and that like I've done before. On the bottom of the tree, rough bark, and then the rest of the tree will be smooth. So your defining feature for a Eucalyptus saligna, a Sydney blue gum, one of the first ones is it should have a metre sock. As we walk, I'll show you the exact example. But then going to your Botryoides from your saligna, Botryoides will have a persistent bark going up the trunk, generally up into the 2/3 of the canopy, and the last third of the canopy will be smooth. And then a Robusta, the coastal one, they're all three, will be a rough bark all the way, large leaves and large fruit. I have all three. We'll just go through those three to see the differences. Anyone tall enough to go and yank the bottom branch off that one, go and do it for me. Is Corymbia maculata, spotted gum. There's only one tree that looks like it, which is Cinerea, which you don't think you have. Thank you. Oh yeah, you do. So Citriodora, which is basically its relative tree again, but it evolved more on the north coast and smells like lemon scent. So the spotted gum, defining feature, spotted trunk, smooth, grey. That's your feature. So really lock that trunk in. There's nothing else. The Citriodora is very similar, but I'll show you it again. It's got less spots on it. It has a lot more smooth barks. So if you turn around, it's just the perfect again, spotted gum. It's got a certain habit, and that's its habit right there. So if you look at its habit, the way it grows, so it's got ascending branches. The branches aren't out horizontally. Every branch that comes off its trunk, off its first order branches, you're going to start hearing that. Its first order branches are all ascending. So it's a feature. As they mature, some will look like they're thing, but they're ascending, which is a feature of a lot of eucalypts, and again not. So it's a way to define them. Pilularis, blackbutt, everything about a pilularis is ascending, but the tips of the leaves. So everything. And I'll show you what I mean when we get to it. Yeah. And Saligna cross, because the trunk doesn't have a 1 metre sock. It's a very
Sydney
good tree,
blue
it's a
gum.
significant tree. We have independent people come here and assess our trees, and that's the only tree I haven't let them cut. That tree's on me. That kills someone, I go to jail. The only tree on campus is my tree. So they want it cut down, and I don't want it cut down. I had to prune it at the wind, and it's self-pruning. Tom's probably going to start teaching you about like swollen branch collars. Why they want to remove this tree is all the branch collars. They're not good, they're swollen, and it throws branches. I'm just like the tree more than I like the students. So really I'll give you no crossing in it, no Botryoides. And then its habit. It's a single leader, so it's a good strong tree in the fact that it's got a twin leader. Its only problem is its branch collars are a bit swollen, which is my favourite term, summer branch drop. Real scientific, but it's a true thing, or autumn drop. It's been changed a lot, and a lot of studies have gone into it. They think it's mainly to do with humidity is why they throw them. It's when they throw them. And obviously loading of water and can't hold on to it anymore.
One of the things that we'll discuss as well next year when you're doing pruning operations is like how to deal with a tree like this in terms of like someone might say we want to take that limb off because of the swelling, but options, and Zach will be, I think we're picking it up in terms of weight reducing rather than removing the whole limb.
Perfect.
And then even cable bracing, like maybe not necessarily on this one, but the one to the rear that as it goes up becomes co-dominant, like cable bracing, just to mutually support each leader. Like we're trying to move away from removing whole limbs that just introduce a pocket of decay at that collar, and just reducing the torque at the collar itself by reducing the M weight. And that's why we're going to take that 5 months that we've got to train you to the point where you can get out onto those tips and effectively reduce weight rather than just be one of those like someone who goes, oh, I can't get out there, so I'm just going to take it from back here. And it's not because like that's what's good for the tree. It's because that's where your skill set can take you to without taking you beyond that. So.
And this is a perfect tree for that here. This has been end weight reducted heavily over this path. That's how I kept it. I've wrote a spiel on this tree. And if you can see, I had to take half that major lower limb off. And like he said, but I've kept the rot away from the tree trunk itself by leaving that long limb, and it's still got some habitat. But if you look at all the branches this side, they've all been tip pruned. So, and we're trying to stay away from lion's tailing is a big term. It's getting a lot of people do wrong with end weight reduction. People tend to think it's a hard end weight reduction is probably the hardest pruning that I've undergone learning in the last 10 years to get it right. And there's a lot of people with a lot of different ideas, and they're not wrong and they're not right.
Maintaining form.
Yeah, maintaining form. And the way I ended up looking at it is you do pinch pruning of like a little hedge plant, like to make it to mass up, like pulling the tip out. That's what we really need done, but in a big tree. And it's a skill. It is a skill. And like you said, actually doing it and climbing and doing it's one of the most difficult parts of climbing. It's a really hard one to do. I didn't do this climbing. You can, as a cherry picker can part right there. So that would have been a really hard job to tip. Look, where's your high point to get out on some of these? Don't get me wrong, good climb is really easy. Kurt, who will turn up, what he's been doing for me in the last couple of weeks, I'll take you to a Nikolai actually that he's done the exact same thing we did last week. We've end weight reducted over a children's playground. So a prime example of that. So anyway, back to just the locking in a couple of trees today. Sydney blue gum, Saligna, 1 metre stock, smooth bark all the way out, generally grey with a little bit of white. So it's when I was talking about Grandis, it's its brother tree. It's very white, very similar growth pattern, metre stock, but it's white, not grey. Sydney blue gum. Take a photo, look it up, try and lock that one in. We'll do Sydney blue gum, eucalyptus spot tree. These 3 trees, it gives me the right version of it. I'll buy their coffee, no one else's.
Okay, Agathis.
Oh, he's on. I knew you might get it. Now, he gets Agathis, but which one? That's where you get it. You got to.
I'll have to Google that.
There's 2. One's Australian and one's New Zealand.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so there's on your list Phycifolia, flowering gum, West Australian flowering gum. Obviously, is you might want to do. We're going to walk past a couple more, but
That's the
there you go.
Kauri Pine.
That's your biggest eucalypt
So,
nut. You'll get. So take it. Cuddle pie. It's the drawing. Feel free to get in there and take them so you remember that one.
Kauri Pine.
But that's your flowering gum. It'll be the one you'll start to know. It's pink or orange. So these are Queensland Kauris.
Agathis. I can't think of this.
They're a Queensland Kauri. The last boss planted them before he left. There's a statue of himself. Because we wouldn't do a statue of him.
Is it another Cunninghami line? I can't get the species.
Yeah, I'm not. You're walking through a grove of juvenile and mature ones. Yeah, so, but what is it? What do you have to write in the exam? The botanic name or the... Both. We'll start yelling out Corimbia maculata. So just help yourselves. If anyone is as shit as I am at spelling, start saying it to yourself. Write it down today on the paper. Corimbia maculata.
Robusta.
I've got your list.
Species name Robusta for Agathis.
Was it?
Yeah. Well, that's the one that's come up with.
See, that's a Queensland. That's Queensland Kauri. Yeah, so spotted gum. I don't want to cram it in that I find it the easy one, but to me, if you start looking, they've got that similar pattern. They all look very much the same. Anyone still around an hour? Yes. Hello. There's heaps. Shut up about spotted gums then. Yeah. You've got the gorgeous ones. Big, lovely. That's the feature, but that's the only one that gets this big. the only one. So, put it with tape. Anyone? Just take one each just to throw it in your pocket for the day, so when you get home this Savo, you throw it away.
Plays
Quick
my
to
nuts.
fucking keep them. Really?
That's,
But just so you pop it out, and it's just to remember, Physofolia. Queensland flowering gum, lock that one in. You get a couple in today, a couple in tomorrow. Like
Western Australian?
West Australian flowering gum.
Yeah, my wife's always saying it's Christmas time. Quick, go get me those flowers.
Yeah, that's it.
Big red ones.
And the cultivars, in my opinion, are weak. You can see that's not a happy tree. That one and one at the end. And we've had 1, 2 die out. Again, because they're a grafted tree too, remember? They're not on their own rootstock. They're on one of our trees. I did remember its name. One. So, arguably one of only 2 of our proper deciduous trees in Australia. All the other ones from Tasmania. This little tree, I forget its name, was on Gardening Australia a few weeks ago though. But that's your white cedia. So that's Melia. So you've got 2 on your list, I think. Yeah, Solaris. Yeah, so you've got red cedar and white cedar. So that's your white cedar. They're very old and they don't get older than that. But as you can see, they're losing their leaves. Does anyone know what tree this one is? Or, yeah, Kaji. So you've got 2 Casuarinas on your list. You've got Cunninghamiana and I saw them before. Yeah, so and you've got Gleditsia. So that's Gleditsia. So that's your swamp one. Casuarina, your swamp Casuarina. So it's got, if you go to it, and again take one, it's got the thicker leaves and bigger fruit. And it's a smaller tree. That's as mature as one gets, and that's a male. So you get male and female. You'll notice it's just getting its male fruits on the ends of its modified leaves now. Phyllodes. Anyone know what the real leaf on there is? Yeah, so if he brings a bit back, or go over there and have a look, they're all got the male tips on it at the moment. So it's a defining feature of that one.
What species did you call it?
So it's Casuarina glauca. Sorry, what did I say before? It's a Gleditsia. Glauca. Yeah.
You know, the stand out the front of the campus as you turn in on the right hand side, they're all like the state group working on the last week, so they're all waterproof as well.
They grow from all our creeks here through the Illawarra. They're a great big tree-bearing plant. Yes, the swamp Casuarina. Swamp Sheo. So Sheo.
Grows on the headlands, the coast,
Yes.
headlands and such.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the big ones up through Kangaroo Valley and things like that, that's Cunninghamiana. We'll walk through one that's a feature here, and they're not usually used as a feature tree, and you'll see why. You can see there as well. They ruined the ground. They're not a beautiful tree in a sense, but they're very good in their purpose.
Yeah.
That's what we're throwing, the odd one here to show that they still can be used. On your list, it's used everywhere. You'd even have one in a park out where you are. Surely. Yeah, the brush box. So that's, one of the biggest street trees that's getting used. It's a massive park tree. Again, find a defining feature to me that it looks like a rainforest tree, but it's more like a gum.
Yeah, it's amazing little gum.
Yeah.
So many killer characters.
That's it. And you want to see Lamington National Park if you want to see them in their massive form. Ficus rubiginosa. Yes. So Port Jackson. It's our grove, probably one of my most favourite spots on campus.
What did you say it was the name was?
It's Port Jackson.
Oh, right.
It's got its aerial roots, which we're about to start to encourage actually on the other side of the footpath to create a proper dome. And obviously these trees will be here well past our grandchildren. It's actually one of the biggest challenges we have here, is that we are actually at a part where we've got to systematically take lots of trees out and replant them. It's not the bush. There's a lot of people here. So why this one's rubiginosa, or Port Jackson fig? The size of the leaf, the size of the fruit, and the underside of the leaf. There's something on there. Make a note of it. It's orange. It's a defining feature. I want to get too deluded at how it's fertilised and only by a wasp. It's actually a really good time for a photo of these. It's the best the aerial roots have been. Something
Ironbark.
so we looked at mahoganies quickly, the blue gums, and we'll get back to it. And then Corimbia. But then the other type of eucalyptus is ironbark. That's an ironbark, and that's the local ironbark. So this is Eucalyptus paniculata, but can quite commonly get mixed with Eucalyptus sideroxylum, which he's got down here, which isn't a local tree, but is very black. Then you can see how this is quite black, but not black. It's dark brown. If you look all the way up it, it gets usually lighter too, whereas sideroxylum is black. I'll show you sideroxylum in a sec, so you can sort of get them two as two ironbarks. Is sideroxylum, which is on your list, but then paniculata, which is, if you're from Wollongong, is our biggest ironbark. It will be significant to you as an arborist in the next 20 years if you stay with it. You will cut one down. It will blunten your saw. It will blunten your chipper.
It will burn all night.
It will. Make great furniture. It's got a thinner leaf and a smaller fruit. Casuarina cunninghamiana.
That's these ones?
Yep.
Massive ones of those down where I'm
Yeah.
like fucking huge.
Yes. Yep.
What
But-
did you say the difference was again?
So the difference is these are bigger,
Yeah.
but they have a thinner leaf and a longer leaf
Okay.
and a smaller fruit. And Glauca has a fat leaf and a bigger fruit and is a shorter tree. This one grows on the rivers, the other one grows more in the swamp. They both love water. It's a trick. Boom, thank you. So there's me trick. They're not spotted gums, they're your lemon scented gum. How I said they're so closely related, but slightly different. I'll give you money if you name that one. Yeah, so that one's Citriodora. Well done. Lemon scented gum. Go under there and find some from why, and you'll get to know why. It's the lemon scented. It's probably done.
That's a terrible one.
At the time, they're actually more intense, that smell, if anyone else can find them. So the difference is not much. The leaf's smaller, the fruit's different, and their habitat's a bit, the way they grow is a little bit different. If you look at these ones, the leaves, to me, after you look at them for quite a long time and you know them really well, I only have to glance because the leaf to me is totally different. So there's your two defining features for me. If you take a moment just to stare at this one and see the fine leaf and lock in the Citriodora, the lemon scented gum has got a fine leaf and the spotted gum's got a fat chunky leaf, and it's thick too, leathery. So they're exactly the same. You walk up and you go, oh look, it's spotted gum, and you go, oh great, I've got Corimbia maculata. Just check. Have to smell the leaf once. Because you're done. It smells like citrus. It's not. It's your lemon scented gum. And so that's why I was saying it's the easiest one to learn for the day. You can take them two home today, really. You should really know them. And they're different. Well, he's ahead of me test. Love it. So well done. 1 metre soft. You're close. Hey,
Yes, I mean, it's more white, like,
Yeah.
it's kind of got a different...
so that's your grandest. So that's why I say it's a bit tricky. It looks exactly like Sydney blue gum, but actually comes from the north coast predominantly, but does grow in the Illawarra. I'll show you a few more around the corner, but it's usually out-competed and dominated by blue gums, but there is grandest mixed in, and they're just bigger. They're pretty much the same tree to me, but bigger. The defining feature other than the white trunk is the fruit. In a grandis, they're like a crown to me. Well, they are a crown, they actually protrude out of the fruit. And in Saligna, they sit flat or slightly point in. And this one being grand, and the king, the crown sticks out, it's the king, and it's bigger. To me, that's how I remember it, because it's the big crown tree. It's got a crown of a fruit, it's the big monster, and that's one of our biggest trees in Australia. For height. These are little red cedars underneath it. Go with your white cedar. So yeah, if you're locking in that Saligna, that's a little brother one, so that'll come with it like Citria Dora will come with spotted gum. Grandis will come with Saligna. They're the same tree that have just evolved slightly down different paths. DNA testing proved that. They could almost just be subspecies of the same tree. We've given them different names because we're human. We like naming everything. Again, a few more Cunninghammianas hanging over the waterway, trying to replicate nature. And again here.
The black one.
Yeah, you can see it's a little bit blacker.
Cytoroxylum.
Yeah, eucalyptus cytoroxylum. Tree and landscape. So we've just stopped here to look at the eucalyptus cytoroxylum, the other ironbark. And so you can see that's black. The whole thing's black. They're two very unhealthy specimens. They're in very poor soil. This whole thing is poor soil. Oh, that's on your list. Pearsonios, Salmon tea tree. When it struggles in soil, you know your soils are bad. Everywhere there's a mound in this place, it was made by BHP, slag. That's why we struggle sometimes. It's taking us years to build up some soil. Yeah, it's a shocking tree. You don't want to go near that. I wanted to call it black buck, but I don't know what to go with me. They've got something written underneath there. It's on the eucalypt. It's actually the name's on it. Can't remember what they've got on it. They might have now. So yeah, defining feature on your ironbark, cytoroxylum, black bark, and it gets pink flowers. And it's planted on street trees a lot in Sydney.
Or grab a leaf.
Your other one's Labogartum.
Has anyone done it or smelled it before? You'll know
It's
when
not
you...
like the citri tree, it is the eucalypt. So it's a great defining feature, that's it. And remember, that's what tea tree, that's the one harvested. Plant hundreds of thousands of that tree. That's the one they harvest and squeeze the oil out. That's right. Yeah, this is slip out of your brain. Drop down one. Defining features, anyone?
The bark and the sort of straight up and down bark.
Yeah.
Slight twisting.
Yeah, slight twisting on it. Perfect. So to me, that's the feature. It slightly twists and its colour. It's orange.
And what's it called?
It's Microcories, which is tallow wood.
Tallow.
So it's a heavily planted tree. It's one of the eucalypts I've not seen fall over. They tend to die and stay in situ. They're a great habitat tree. They're a great flowering tree. Again, they're another one that tolerates the urban environment very well, like the spotted gum. So they're one of the eucalypts that is great for your urban environment. Is a little weedy in the Illawarra. You're talking about Teraticornis. That twin leader there is a Teraticornis. And there is some perfect defining features on that for me. It's what makes a Teraticornis a Teraticornis. Again, the grey bark, the way it's blotchy and patchy, and it comes down to that hard sock at the bottom again, which is usually about 2 metres to 3 metres.
It's like burning red.
Not healthy. Mulch rings is obviously something we've incorporated large in the last 5 years. It's a very good thing to do.
Sure, you use one of these.
Folks, away from the scored. Yeah, but you can see that it's not healthy by looking up into its canopy. A eucalypt, a Pterodocornis should block out 70% of light. So we're not blocking out 70% of light. Again, it's a little bit of, to me, it's probably sick because of what it's planted in. It's just struggled. The bark's cracked and the pathogens are in there now. So those two there are a tree we just looked at. And again, you've got the same feature as the one just up there and the one over there. And it's a heavily planted tree, as I said. So it's a tallow wood, slightly twisted bark, orange. Oh, and its fruit has a received bend. Emblem on the end of it. Literally, if you find one, that is it. It's exactly the same. It's like where they got it from. You could Google it. Found one, did you?
Kind of. I mean, it hasn't matured yet. Yeah, that's like early stages.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, it is early stages. It does look a bit better than that one. Yeah, so that's it. Tom mentioned the Pterodocornis, and I've just said it a few times. So Pterodocornis grows from Papua New Guinea to Tasmania. So it's one of the most varied eucalypts. Goes all the way down the east coast. So another example is that is Pterodocornis. So they can look different to each other. It's a hard one and an easy one to me in the same time. They all have the same, they do look the same. But they
Tall one.
Yeah, the one with the white trunk one. Just saying that that's another Pterodocornis, which is growing out of a paper bark. Someone want to touch? Someone touch the leaves. It's on your list. Prickly. Hence the name prickly. Prickly leaf paper bark. Sideroxylon? No, sorry. You get there? No. Diaploides. Yeah, so prickly leaf, paper bark. Just touch it once. It'll probably stay in your brain because it's prickly. It looks soft, but it's not. Pop quiz. Biggest Cunninghamiana that was here. River she oak. It's got this here. It was taller than them all. And that here was blown out there. Started at the top. What was it? Correct. So lightning killed that in about 2 minutes. It's one of the hardest pieces of wood I've cut down, so the wood was even transformed inside that tree. It went really hard. She was properly baked. There was footage slightly from it, and there was a huge, this area just went, just And yeah, when it first happened, you can see there, all that was black. So it just blew out the bottom of the trunk. Scrap it. Yeah, and just had this huge line going down the whole way down from what, right on the tip of the tree, right to there. Pretty cool. Yeah. A feature tree. That's Casuarina cunninghamia used as a feature tree. There's been a push to use this as our Christmas tree and have it fully decorated. Yeah. So the ring around it, and obviously you can see the paving and swelling, it dips. That's the problem with using it as a feature tree in paved area, is it's got an extremely adventitious root system, we'll call it. Not on your list, but that's Eucalyptus bostiscoana. Coast grey box. It grew here on campus as one of the predominant eucalypts before we cut them all down.
What's the, I thought the grey box have like a strip of bark on it.
Yep, does. So,
Not the whole way up.
no, and it's finished. And it's the weather bit, so it's holding onto it. When it goes dry, it doesn't more. It's just been wet, seems to not do it. So all these that went down through here, or all of them, so they're all actually at about the same. But you are correct, probably less bark hanging off than that in the last 10 years. You're
Is
correct.
that Basisto's box or whatever?
Bostiscoana, yeah.
The
No, well, if you can picture that this was 12 years ago, this wasn't the entry to the library. The library was around the side, and this was a huge garden bed that married into all of that over there. So there's another great one. I'll just give you the quick pop test because we're doing it for the day. Ironbark. The first one we looked at, the Illawarra's ironbark, punctata. And that's actually a good specimen of it. And you can see it's that chocolate colour, not black. Paniculata. Did I say punctata? Sorry, thank you for pulling me up. Paniculata. No, it's good. It's good. I will do that. The P ones get me in the dyslexia. Paniculata. It was actually another one that took me a while to lock in. And that's the flame tree again. You should have been walking. I didn't want to over half about the flame tree, but they just jump out at you now. And just really be one of the ones that you don't even have to fight. Allow it to be there. After a few months of charting the do-ab, flame tree's not there. Worried. Severe. And then, I didn't want to go with it, but cabbage palm, you've walked past shitloads of them. People are smiling and nodding good.
Yeah, get rid of one that you think.
So it's a good example of it's a broad open area, and we've used trees that are on your list that are local to this area as features, not just as, you know, habitat or whatever. You've got a grove of trees there, which is predominantly Sydney blue gum, all of them. Unless they've got a wider trunk, which you can just see next to the rainbow stairs. You've got two really tall, straight, white trunks, and then a little bit in there, they're greyer. Because you mix of punctata, saligna, and grandis all together. And again, another grandis there, which has got a multi-trunk, grown strange. Overplanted it. We've got quite some overplantings as well. That's why they've grown up in more of a forest fashion.
What would be with regards to the coastal grey box, like some of the pruning considerations you give, like given the tree's location in
so
terms of the high traffic area?
It's a high target tree.
Yep.
So that's what you come into. So this tree is actually what we call, it's a medium rated tree on our system, but it's monitored highly due to its location and its assets underneath it. It's got a library, it's got a cafe, it's heavily populated. So yeah, this tree is something that would be looked at to be deadwooded yearly if it needs it. Whereas a tree, like I was saying up over there, that's in the garden, we don't remove the dead wood at all. No dead wood gets removed from trees that are over garden beds. That's habitat to us, because it's not dangerous. You walk into a garden and get hit by a stick, that'll be in the risk assessment, and say you walked into a garden. We've had people try and sue us for tripping over in gardens. You walked into a garden and tripped over. You didn't trip over on the path.
Again, consideration, like the reason why I asked that for you guys is as future climbers and whatnot, this would probably be a pretty standard like deadwooding job that you would do annually. So when you look at it and think you're going to turn up on a day and be like, what are we doing today? Oh, just a deadwood over a high target area. Look at an example of a tree like this and then start at least to map in your head, how would you approach it? Like, not in terms of pruning, but think about how would you access the tree. Like, you probably have all seen it by now using access lines, which we're going to cover off on, but this is pretty much a pretty standard job that you'd be doing at the end of, or like, you know, in the years to come in your careers. So like, you could get up there, nip out like even one, like little pieces of deadwood and whatnot that are going to drop off. Like, if you look through this entire tree, the job sheet might say remove all deadwood, and that means like remove all deadwood. And because of the change in the local environment, it might, like that job sheet might specify no live tissue to come off because it's already compromised because of the change of like around the root system, around the tree line. So they don't want to remove any live tissue. You've got to look at how you're going to access all these points to get deadwood out of this tree. So just things to consider as you look at them. Like,
And for something like this tree, when can you do it?
some of you are
We're
going to
doing
be
it now.
running your own businesses in the years to come. So
My workplace doesn't give us overtime. Again, when do I do it? There's some of the complexes.
do I set fire? What do I set fire to?
They don't pay for that either. They're claiming no money. Horticulturally, a lot started. Concepts and where they came up with the theme for the place.
This is the old duck pond.
This is the duck pond with the duck pond lawn. It's got its own Facebook, I think. Things have grown quicker in here than they normally would have in a bush environment or an unirrigated environment. This isn't irrigated in here anymore, but it was heavily irrigated for about 20 years. We turned off all irrigation other than major lawns because it's a criminal event, really, isn't it? Just to keep pumping water into the gardens because we like tree ferns and bird's nests. They should be replaced with something that can tolerate our moving forward climate, so that's why they aren't. But an example is, we turn around, we've got in the distance just past this lovely face that gets painted every year now in different colours, and he pushes over me palm there to put it up. Don't like him, like the face. 1 metre sock in the background with an extremely white trunk, very straight. So that's one we've talked about. How people can yell out the names of their classmates would be great. That's one we've talked about, but it's grown a little bit more in the forest setting. So, someone tell me where the first limb is on that tree coming off the trunk and what it is. First tree we did this morning was Sydney Blue Gum. It's not that one. Yeah, two defining features for me is that it's wider than the Sydney. If you get it through, it's got this protruding crown, grandest grand king crown. So that's how it would grow in a forest. So if you're up the north coast in the forest somewhere, they just grow straight, big long trunks, great for the forestry industry. Great milling tree.
A lot around the Central Coast sort of area. Almost up as far as Newcastle, sort of growing very similar to that also.
Yes. Big tree. So on your list is we were having a little joke about it before, was punctata. This one in here's only got a little bit of it. It's the one with the possum box on it. It's got a little bit of an orange tinge, about 2 metres below the orange box on the left. It gets more orange tinge in a drier situation. Trees under this wet conditions, some of their defining features are a little bit lower, I've found. But that's a punctata. And again, you can see its branches don't happen until it's 20 litres above that possum box. Yeah, I was just putting that one in because we're going to see a couple of punctatas to try and get these up to about 10 plants for the day. Fig trees. So we did Port Jackson, and we walked past a grove of Rubiginosa. This is the other one I'll try and get you to go for the day. So it's got a bigger leaf, and it's a sort of broader tree. And why we're standing here, this is the perfect example of a, yeah, well done. Ficus microphylla, var microphylla, Port Jackson fig. Yeah.
So what was this one called?
Moreton Bay, sorry. I just said Port Jackson, confusing myself. Done it again. Moreton Bay. But this is the perfect example grown in full sun in a lawn. In the middle of that garden is the exact same tree without a branch on it until, I don't know, 15 metres? Yeah. Because it grew up in amongst all the other trees in a rainforest setting. So there you got like exactly the same tree with a completely different characteristics. One's a big short dome, one's obviously turning into what you would have called a traditional rainforest fig tree. But that's just a good example. I thought I'd start you here. It's an easy. When I said Maculata was your easiest tree of the day, was it? Is anything we've looked at today anything like that other than, yeah, maybe the Rubiginosa with smaller leaves, smaller fruit? And what did I say about the underside of the Rubiginosa's leaf? Had a bit of brown or a bit of orange, a bit of different colour. Do you see it on this one? It's not as predominant. Some species, some of them do have it a lot more than others, but it's not as predominant in the Moreton Bay. And they're very simply to pick them apart, aren't they? It's just huge leaves. It's got football-sized leaves. Bigger branches, bigger trunk. But you go into a rainforest like Minamurra Rainforest, you'll see a Port Jackson bigger than this. So,
Moreton Bay.
Bigger.
Moreton Bay. Yeah.
No, Port Jackson.
Not a very.
Yeah. No, and a Port Jackson with bigger. It'll look bigger than this.
Yeah, sorry.
So that's why it can be confusing.
You don't get any helios down there.
We don't get heliae at all naturally, but we will be walking past a couple.
And we've had it before with dudes who are like, nah man, like the only way to climb a tree is like roving brassica and whatnot. But with this new package and the methods of access that we're going to teach you in the blocks coming up, it's like your task could be to get out on these tips. And where are you going to set your high point? How are you going to prune this tree within a time limit or like within a window that will make you an effective production climber? So having a knowledge of like a knowledge and like a competency of using a throw ball to install access lines, like knowing your rope angles and your redirects to get all around this tree is something that we're going to work and develop on over the next 5 months. So if there's an opportunity for you, if you are working and climbing, like where the window dictates in terms of time, if you're there for a full day, and we had it in the last block where a dude's like, oh, if this was at work, I'd just get the pole saw, and you're like, well, you're not at work, and this is an opportunity for you to learn. Like start looking at it from how can I like stuff around in this tree in order to be like, how do I get out to here?
It'd be like if this canopy was more like that tree over there, and then like that fig over there, and had a massive canopy.
Yeah, exactly. So you got to think about like how to climb safely more than anything, and then your efficiency. Because if you spend all your energy getting to the top of a tree and your forearms are cramping, and it's like 8:30 in the morning, and someone's standing on the ground being like, I'm paying this dude $600 and this is like what he's turning up, you're not going to go too far. So it's like again, look at these trees that we're going through and think, how would I do it? How would I climb it? How else could I do it? So
yeah, let's get in. Let's get up there and just start. Spotted gum? One's not. Go and work it out. Use your IDing ways you've come up with while we talked about them. Which one's going to be the Citriodora and how to tell? Already doing it like I said before. It's not as spotty, is it? It's different spotted. It's not grey. It's got those blotchy spots. It's a little bit different in its colour. And it's thin leaf. Yeah, we've already locked one in. Illawarra one. When I say Illawarra, it's got a broader than the Illawarra, and it's chocolate coloured. Ironbark. Paniculata. You can give me the common name. Don't know. I think it's grey. Grey common name?
Grey gum.
It's just grey ironbark.
Oh, sorry, you won.
Yeah, so that's 3 we've already done today. So why don't I stop here and I try to have a break here? Good spot. These trees are large too for how old they are. You're not looking at trees older than 40 years old here too. And they're big. That's not even 40 behind me. That's big. Pretty big. One of the more delicious fruits you'll ever eat. Hard to get them off the first. Lily cool.
Yeah.
Spotted gums.
Oh, yeah.
And your lemon scented, then an ironbark in the background. And we did a paperbark not long ago, and that's it there. So again, we're all going to know a paperbark. So you're going to get a paperbark, you're going to have several paperbarks, but that's going to be the easy one because it's prickly. So when you're looking at them, that's the one we'll start with for you because it's a prickly leaf paperbark. Guinea to Tasmania is right there. The one we did with the tea. Pterodocornis. Yeah, forest red gum. It's not its fruit, it's the problem. See the persistent bark again, and the end, so the last third smooth. The light we've got's making that terrible to see, but you would see it from the other side. But that is the quintessential Botryoides. It started throwing quite a number of limbs, and what Tom was talking about before, about targets. And I was telling you this is our graduation area. It's one of the sort of main thoroughfares into the campus. It hangs over a lawn, it hangs over a building, and it started throwing like large limbs, and its branch collars, like the Seligna we first looked at, are starting to swell. So our independent company is Arbor Safe have deemed it a removal. Again, behind you is another lovely Pterodocornis and the ironbark. Paniculata. Oh, locking that one in for the day. Okay, so I was talking about the Perth. That's the beautiful Botryoides that's got to the age where it's got to go. And there's your perfect example of another Botryoides, but of a different growth pattern. Suppressed, but has the same. So it has persistent bark on its trunk all the way up, and it's only the last third that's smooth bark. So to tell it apart from Seligna, that's your defining just straight away feature. Seligna's going to have that 1 metre, sock on the bottom of it. Botryoides is going to be persistent up into the canopy. You can go further and look at the flower and fruits and the leaves. Botryoides will have a slightly bigger leaf and quite a bigger flower and fruit. So if you can get the flower and fruit, God, how lucky is that? So that's Botryoides fruit. If we take that, that's great. And Selignas will be a third the size of that to half the size of that. And the leaves will generally, that could be a Seligna leaf. So that's where it's hard. So that's got Seligna in it, remember? Because they're all three of them are the same tree, just DNA changed. Where they grew up changed. Seligna mountain, Botryoides flat plateau, Robusta on the sand. I had a Robusta here at one point, but she's gone. Prominently Seligna, but they have a smidge of Botryoides in them. That's why they don't just have a 1 metre sock. It goes up the trunk a little bit. But that's where Seligna and Botryoides And Seligna and Botrytis, they have a little bit of different in their growth pattern. Botrytis tends to be a bit of a broader, more lanky tree, and Seligna will be that big, tall, dominant tree that's grown up on your mountain. Me, 20 years ago here, that one lily pilly in the middle there, I planted that 19 years ago, and I remember it quite clearly. And the tamarin and the firewheel tree. So all three of them, and then the baby dwarf lily pillies underneath it are a different type of lily pilly. You've got Cascade, Bush Christmas, so they're smaller trees. Some are pruned for photos, and then some have been let go. And they're only small. There's some of the lily pillies in there that are 20, they're 20 years old and they're the same as that. So they've been in a long time. And they're suppressed slightly because they are under two big trees. But they are ready to take their position when the other two trees are removed. Again, yeah, so that's a native tamarin that we just looked at in Section Square. They can't, sometimes aren't the most spectacular tree, but environmentally they're important because they're near diversity. They'll bring different insects and different birds to what other trees will here. That, a couple of small hollows up in the top of it. It's closely related to Sydney blue gum. It's the mountain blue gum, Deanii, but don't worry about it as a tree. There's a nice example of what you will be looking at as arborists and deciding on what to do. Huge piece of fungus fruiting body in that massive wound. Piker's test.
Is that have you guys addressed that?
Yeah, it's 15%. It's quite. What you can see is almost it for the rock.
Yeah, really.
We could go deeper into the species of fungus it is and the species of tree, and that they both would fold together. And generally, it'll only take out 15% and create a hollow. Yes. So, microcoris, how I was saying, it's sort of that orangey. It's brown, but a little bit of orange in it, and it stays together. It slightly twists. Another perfect example of lovely Seligna, 1 metre soft. Let's put on that one. And you wanted to know the difference with robusta. Two teraticornis. So you can almost confuse them with a Sydney blue gum. Sorry, I've done it. Both blue gums. I confused myself. They're not teraticornis. And it doesn't look like that one doesn't have a sock on it. What got me? Yeah, that. See, that's either. We're going to cable brace that, so if you want to pull apart.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't even want to do it?
No, we're cutting it down.
Oh, yeah.
No, we use total safety. I'll show you. We've got some bolts, some really good slinging shit. I'll show you.
Yeah.
In a minute. Go through here and then back. Yeah, so this is punctata. It's got a little bit of orange in it. A little bit of useless trivia. The Australian camo outfit is the only camo outfit in the world that has orange in it. You probably can just see it in your own brain, the little orange patch, because of that tree. It was the tree that made them think in the Australian bush there is a lot of orange, lots of orange. Dying leaves as they go into senescence, dying, as they're going back.
Probably should get off the road a bit.
Often orange, so that's how it got into the Australian camo. And it all started with that tree and noticing how much orange is in it. Again, I will say, under all the water that we've been having, the orange is not as predominant. I think it might be just when the trunk's a bit drier. Yeah, watch your back. I also bring you here because Zach? Yeah. I just asked about cable and bracing. We've been asked, or been told that that is a twin leader that's going to, at some point, definitely fail and fall apart. Split straight down the middle. So we've been asked to cable it together, place it together, so if it did fall, one branch would hold the other and it would stop it from falling to the ground at the rate that it would. Slow it down, but it'd still happen. And it'd probably bring the other one with it anyway. This is where it's a bit of a hard decision. It's taken 4 years. It's managed to last for 4 more years. But after you cable and brace, it's an ongoing cost. you have to have that examined every 12 months. And then it's up to the people who've examined it to say maybe 18 months or 24 months. But they'll leave it at 12 months because it makes money, doesn't it? And then you're looking at $1,500 for them to come and look at it. So after 10 years, that tree will have cost me 15 grand just to have somebody look at the table that's in it. And look where we are. How many gum trees is there? It's a car park. You know what I mean? So you've got to take, yeah. So that will be coming out.
That's your bracing. That's your bracing.
We use total height safety.
Yeah, okay. You've got up.
Or I've had the training and I've done a couple and they pulled them out and put their own back in.
So building the home.
And when I was cutting the tree down, I know there was a possum curled up in there, so he's still got his home. Yellow bloodwood,
Thanks, Zinnia.
by memory.
Yeah.
Pass that round. That's its budding and the leaf. Long, falcate, thick, leathery, same colour on both sides. So we do know that as a feature. Sorry, that's the only one I didn't go back on Mycocorys. Mycocorys has a two-toned leaf, whereas all the other eucalypts we've looked at today actually have the. He'll explain it later on why in your TAFE coursing. But it's a defining feature of this one. Large falcate leaf, leathery, second largest of the fruits of all the eucalypts. So they're your two biggest fruits you're looking at in the eucalypt world.
Do your bloodwoods, like the bark profile on bloodwoods, are they
Yes,
distinguishing?
Yeah, so let's go to that trunk and have a look at it. Thanks, Tom.
I'm learning as well.
Yeah, so it is, you've got two in here. You have Zinnia, Vicifolia and Gymnifolifolia. Yeah, so yellow bloodwood. It's got some yellow to it. If you cut through this trunk, you know when you get a real white, sometimes you get a real white coloured wood, yellow. Quite yellowy. Dries out, doesn't stay yellow. But yeah, it's on your list. Small tree, if you look it up. It's a small eucalypt that grows on the top of our escarpment up there, just on the sandstone ridge. Doesn't like it here, in clay, in a car park. This tree's as old as every other tree in this car park. That's 42 years old, that tree. Yeah, she just crept away. You can see the gnarling in it and the twisting in it. So you can almost, as another moving forward as arborist, how it's gone like that, twists this way and it's got gnarls in it. That's all to do with the weather it's dealing with as it was growing up. I'd almost put that as an increment strip. That's building itself because it's went to fall over at some point. And it was in amongst other trees as well. It was suppressed by a bigger tree, right where you're standing would even still be there, a remnant of the trunk. A lot of trees that came out of this car park. About a third of the trees that were in this car park have been removed, and nearly every tree that's in this car park probably had a store on it. Trees in car parks, eucalypts in car parks. This car park, I don't think you'll see ever designed like this again. It's not a good idea. Doesn't really work. I think we're at about 55 cars in this car park with windscreen smashed. But 2 a year, I think, the average. It's just, I like it. It's just because I like trees. Blue gum. Blue gum. Blue gum. Cut through the gum. Distance is Eucalyptus nicolai. Heavily planted in the Illawarra 40 to 20 years ago. Generally won't see it in nurseries anymore because as a species it doesn't really work very well here from the north coast. It would. It likes to dry. Yeah. Doesn't like clay. They hit clay. When I say they don't like it here, that's probably a 50-year-old one killing it.
The Nicolai in the background.
Yeah. And why I bring you here is Tom talked about end weight reduction. So we end weight reducted that last Thursday over the playground, and if when we go over there closer, you'll see that it was specifically asked just to do it over the playground. And then there's two limbs, the one coming over the Lophostomen, the brush box, on your list, and the branch going that way towards the Callistomen, Villamaris, on your list, didn't need to be touched. It's a pretty old tree, actually, one of the older trees that we're probably going to deal with here, because this accommodation's a bit older, it's a street tree. So yeah, now we can go over, and Tom might want to, this is your end weight reduction. Yep. Just, if you want to, now for about 4 months. His height came highly recommended. And we haven't been able to do heaps. We under some sort of restrictions here, we made to do garden maintenance, when we just want to do trees. But yeah, this is a high-end prune, people. This is as good as you can get an end weight reduction. There's one limb here that he had to make a hard decision on, and there was only one decision. Because of the location and the upgrade to when Tom was talking about, specific locations, this was a little playground that had one swing left over in it, and they decided, some funding, we won't do the buildings up or do anything like that, but we'll throw in a brand new little playground area for the kids, got 4 times the size, upgraded it, pushed the softball right out to the fence, and then, 12 months into it, they come in, there's a branch lying in there. And then Arbor Plan turn up and they're like, oh, this is all changed, so you have to change the write up on the tree. So you can quite clearly see the work he did. And when you were talking about where do you get your high point to get out to that, so that was, excuse me, that was a bit of how to do it.
They're planted as street trees because they're very tolerant to high traffic areas, and they're also very tolerant to heavy pruning. Like the brush boxes you'll see quite often around here are underneath power lines, and they just get topped regularly, and yet they don't die. They just go out and turn into vases. So on these forms, when I hand them out, they're to just chuck in street trees, tolerant to high traffic, very tolerant to pollution, like air pollution, and tolerant to regular pruning. What's that?
Are you talking about this little tree here? Laughable. This is where you say don't stop learning. I learnt that tree last. There's one there and there's one there. It's shyness. It's related to peppercorn tree. Yeah. And to. Oh, I thought it was a bucus. No. I didn't know. We looked it up. We got plants. That again shows you how the beauty of these new apps. I would have had to try and look that up back in the day, and that's why I didn't know it. But because of these new apps, we went, it's shiny. He's been, you were saying for specific use, street trees and all that. He's actually the next 2 trees are on your list as well, not the peppercorn tree. But that's Tristianopsis florina. The one you can sort of dark green, you can see poking through there, and that's Callistomen villamaris, which is both on your list. It's actually weeping bottle brush. So yeah, they're all 4. So when he was saying you could use them too for that street tree, tolerate heavy pruning, there's 2 more on your list that are exactly the same too. So your Tristianopsis florina, water gum, one of my favourite trees actually, and yeah, villamaris. Your water gum is very useful tree. That Gonus flexuosa. So if you ever hear of anyone saying they'd like to plant a willow tree like the old Salix babylonica, try to suggest that instead. It's a lovely tree. It's a great tree for habitat too. It really gets a gnarly trunk that just gets lots of hollows, and yeah, microbats and things like that. We love that tree. We do, it's not known, but we are a pretty heavily microbatted campus. They're a little bat that's as big as your thumb, and they just sleep underneath bark and stuff. No one really sees them. Do a hot lap past this tree or something. Small tree, you're going to see lots of them.
Really?
Camellia. Anyone like cups of tea? Tea drinkers? That's what you're drinking. That's what you're drinking right there. So that is the tree that they harvest tea from. Yeah. Yes, Camellia sinensis. Obviously, they keep it tip pruned to just keep edging it. Yeah. So yeah, you could dry out the new tip, green little new shoots of that. That's the West Australian weeping willow. Big gnarly trunk, weeping habit. Quite a nice tree. Get big long racemes of white flowers. Yeah, so this wasn't a small tree. That's just a hanger. And you can imagine that, how big that tree was. If that tree's all like that, suppressed and pushed that way, it took this whole courtyard. It was a big tree. The whole centre of it was dead. She was going to fall apart. Across the road.
Works Road?
Correct.
What's it called, sorry?
So that's Ficus hillii, the hill stick. Perfect example, really. That's their usual way of growing. Longer leaves,
sea oak.
smaller fruit than the first one. And you're standing under a white cedar, so the deciduous tree, your only deciduous tree that's native on your list. You've obviously got the ulmus, I see, which are all Europe, well, they're Chinese trees. And Tuna australis, the red cedar, loses its leaves. It is not traditionally a deciduous tree. It doesn't go dormant in the fact that dormant. Whereas this tree, it's argued again that it doesn't really go dormant, like the one in Tasmania. So again, it's got the denuded third of the last part of the tree smooth, with the rest of it's got the persistent bark. But it's a lot smaller tree. It just shows genetic variance.
Melaleuca, Brachyala, paperbark without paperbark.
On this list, that's the only one that doesn't have the white paper bark with the peel off.
Which client, sorry?
It's Melaleuca brachyata.
Melaleuca Brachyala.
No, it's got what I know, a greyish, fibrous, upright running bark. A cabbage palm and bangalow palm. That's your bangalow palm. Ignore this one. So we looked at Melaleuca stiphyloides before. Who touched it? Spiky? Looks the same. Not so spiky.
What's this one?
Melaleuca armillaris. It's just to show how they can look exactly the same to look at. Doesn't have a paper bark though, does it? So there's your, to help you not confuse that one. Standing here looking at it, it does look a lot like Melaleuca stiphyloides, the prickly paper bark. But then all of a sudden I look at the trunk and the trunk's not paper bark. That's a different one. Plamaris.
Pussman
Got a
Plamaris.
slightly weeping habit. and very vase shaped. That's what his guy said I was going to do. And then I'd say that and I'd go, oh. And then I'd go, oh no, fuck. It's like, make sure my throat's double rusted.
Saligna.
Anyone? This one? Anyone? It's your brush fox. So it's your Lophostomen. Again, just looks a little bit smaller in its leaf because it's just struggling a little bit more. So it just shows you a Lophostomen that struggles always has a bit smaller leaf. The happier it is, generally the bigger the leaf. They just, street trees through Dapto, have a go at them. A lot of them are Lophostomens and they're just shit. They're shit trees. I hate it out there. And then this here is going to be the best example of a red cedar, thank you, that I've sort of got here. Again, that's why I say it's not truly deciduous. Hasn't lost a leaf. Hasn't lost any leaves. They don't really go what we could call, they don't shut off their sugars and completely. So they're not truly a deciduous tree. They generally lose their leaves just due to what month of the year it is. They know it's going into spring, so they tend to throw them all just before spring. But this one doesn't throw its leaves ever. It's evergreen. It's yeah, I think it is. I think it's its little microclimate. Surrounded by gum trees on the northern side, so it doesn't get much direct sunlight. And it's had its ground changed a few times over its lifespan, so it was lucky to live.
Is this being like campus? Are you allowed to?
Was the first part of Wollongong campus. This is building 1, which was a building before this was a university. It was called a teachers' college. That's how the place started. Started as a teachers' college. So I was just here to teach teachers. And that's when they thought, oh, we probably should make it into a university. But that's building 1. And that was the next building to be built. Of course, they didn't name it number 2 though. So we're just about to walk in to the oldest part of campus. That actually is the only part that goes away from our policies of that it has to be endemic to the Illawarra first, endemic to Wollongong first, endemic to the Illawarra second, endemic to New South Wales third. If it's not one of those 3, we generally don't want to plant it anymore. We don't want to use it, even if it's not endemic to here. I generally stop using. We do throw in other little things, like when I say that, it's pretty hard to do understory planting with, you know, you still want to be, it's not quite the bush. Big black butts behind you. I explained to a couple of people earlier, it's one of the easiest eucalypts for me to ID and learn from. Is the only part of a black butt that is pointing down is the drip tip of the leaf. So every part of this tree is ascending. The trunk's ascending, the first order branches, the second, the third, the fourth, they're all ascending. Even the petiole, is it, that holds the leaf up, is ascending. And then the leaf points up and it's only the drip tip, if you look, is pointing down. Everything's trying to ascend. So it's just the defining feature for a black butt for me, and that it has very round fruit, which someone pointed out to me earlier and I didn't know was where it gets its name. Pilularis. I enjoyed that. So, very round fruit. Grows in clusters. Pilularis, anyone wants to take a photo or take an example? As you don't know, you don't need to, because that's what the internet's very good for these days. But yeah. Massive variance in their growth pattern. Bit like Pterocornis we've looked at today. Very different eucalypts, but they both have very much different. You can have small ones, you can have big ones. Yeah, look, 2 next to each other, very sort of similar growth patterns, but different sizes, can be different shapes. And then, tragically, one's just died on the inside there. Little example again, how I'm saying they can look different. That's a Pterocornis inside a courtyard. And again, that's a beautiful example of a Casuarina Cunninghamiana, the river she oak, but he's a removal. Got things wrong with it internally. Got a fair bit of epiponic growth on it, but it's not an ugly tree. Sweeties Robusta. It should have persistent bark all the way to the leaves. This one doesn't because it has a bit of Botrytis in its DNA. But there's your bark. I was trying to explain to you before, they sort of break off every so often. There it stops.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah,
And it doesn't twist. Yeah. Doctor, you do see it. Good. Yeah, so it's a good feature one for me. You don't even have to look up. Tallow wood, you won't go past your eye line to ident after a while. You go with tallow wood. Tallow wood, you don't look at it. You just know it. It's orange.
Yeah, but okay.
Yeah, so that is a 90%. That's Robusta. Just don't look at the last 3 metres. We'll go past another one. But that is Robusta. That's how its genetic variance is. So 7 Mile Beach, Lake Conjola, anywhere of those places, Husky, you know what I mean? That there, you go into a caravan park in any of those places, Robusta. Yeah, swamp mahogany. Swampy. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It's very hard to now go. That is exactly the same tree as a Saligna, but one evolved in the sand and one evolved on the mountains.
Yeah, we have heaps of swampies
Yeah.
down Wooders and
Yeah. Make a lovely chair, good day out.
I've been calling him a big soft bar.
Big soft bark, fucking spiders. Get off. Yeah, but they're good. Big, and like you're saying, those ones that I'm saying on the coast, more fibrous bark than that.
Yeah,
Twice as fibrous. Chunky. We've got one, I'll take this past it, you'll resemble that slightly, but these aren't growing on sand. So you're not going to get that complete.
And yeah, I see these all the time with different
Yep.
amounts of their small growth.
Yep. So that's the genetic variance and where they're located. So you'll just see it more and more now. Massive hills fig and hills fig. And what is the gum tree?
That's one of the ones that they hate up the north.
I'm looking at you. Thank you. Tallywood, yes. That is a Currajong. So's that. My babies, actually. Just I bring them as 2 different variants. Don't ask me their next name. I've forgotten them. They're both just gone. That's actually just
brackish whiten, aren't they?
Yeah, so they're both brackish whiten. Yeah, that's how that's local to here. Yeah. And that's an odd one. Its name's gone.
So on your list there's a Currajong as well that falls within the same family as your Laura Flame. And
Yeah, so
you
they're
get a
both.
photo of that one, that's a Currajong. And those would be like they're pretty slow growing.
Very slow growing. I planted that 2012. Yeah, so that's your Tristianopsis lorina, luscious, that I was talking about. And this is the one that hasn't died. And that one over there we've got an example of why. But this hasn't been sunburnt, the trunk, but I'll show you up here what some sunburnt trunk does look like. Yeah, as I said, so there's some European trees in this area because this is where the campus started and there was no policies about plantings at that point. Come under this fig tree and I will show you some bolts and some slings. Here, bolt up there, bolt in there, bolt through there. Yep. So, yeah, co-dominant trunks that failed in heavy winds. We had almost like a cyclonic event where we had a gust of wind come through campus, blow apart trees in a straight line. Yeah, right. Trees 20 metres that way and 20 metres that way, in a straight line through the campus, didn't get damaged. But this tree, there's a tree in a straight, it was funny. We ended up finding trees in a straight line that must have been hit by, we get a lot of turbulence from the roofs, so you know how wind acts on a tree normally, just sort of blow through it. When wind comes over a building like this, it causes turbulence, so it tends to suck and spin on itself. So when it comes through this canopy, it makes the canopy not just react in a normal way, it's trying to go with the wind, but then the turbulence will hit it, so it'll twist it, and so the top of this tree can dance instead of, yeah, and the result is the wind on that present day was too much.
What do you think of cobra bracing?
Yes and no. It has its purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. The catching slings for catching things that are gonna fail, as long as they've got another thing to catch them, yeah, I'm all good for it. It saves the tree for a bit longer.
Yeah.
But I also think that the company's doing it. It's like anything. You want to make money, don't you? So there's probably a bit more of it happening than it needs to happen. Systematic removal and transitions is probably a better option long term, but for significant trees, yeah. Heritage trees. Something like this tree could have all gone, and you could imagine the loss we would have had. And these here are because of the bolts, not so much the slings, we went with it. And we negotiated a 24-month, after the first 12 months inspection, we negotiated it can be 24 months. And it's just a quick look at the bolts at just the climbing's hourly rate to climb up and look at the bolts instead of doing this whole checking the sling and being $1,000 just to check a sling. So this here we negotiated with ArborSafe that they would employ Total Hate Safety just to do their reports every 24 and just put it straight into the system at just the cost of a climber climbing.
How come
Otherwise,
you guys can't do that yourselves?
I can, but the university's self-insured, and it means I will never have to be liable for anything.
Yeah, sweet.
So we sell our liability for $35,000 a year. I pay a company $35,000, ArborSafe, to take the liability off me. But then you'll see the white tags on all our trees over there. Have a little look. It says ArborSafe, and it's got a number on it. We've got 4,500 trees on that register. I have to do what they say though. So, and if I'm not doing enough of what they say, they'd obviously renege on their insurance. So I've got, at the moment, so column
Cook
R's.
Island pine.
I think you got it on here, don't you?
Much slower growing. So.
It is in there.
Yeah.
I think.
Tree. It gets a lot of pollen come off it when it does. Pass it around if you want. They're called rosettes. And Zach was asking, there is different types. There's obviously, this is a cultivar, there's a green one, and then this blue spruce. But to count them there's different numbers. It's a botanical way of doing it.
They are.
I probably would have given
Yeah, well, it's a gymnosperm, yeah. It's got cones.
Well, I thought it was the drivers.
Yeah.
Difference between Angio and
Yeah.
one.
One's flowering and one's flower. Oh, there's your male flower. Come up here, fellas. They've got male flowers actually that are just finishing or just starting.
Wait, so on the
We're just starting.
within I think
Yup.
knowledge assessment, there's a question about discerning the difference between angiosperms and gymnosperms. So like gymnosperms will not flower, and with all your pines will have the cone, and angiosperms are pretty much predominantly all your flowering plants, or all your flowering trees, which is the majority of like your eucalypts and whatnot. So with regards to like your cedrus, of the ones that I've worked on, you might get up and you can probably see one branch that's crossing over up through there. Like they're quite when you're doing your thinning and your weight reduction there, because they're an ornamental tree, like there's no real point trying to shape them or anything. Like they're more a tree that you just maintain, because they're a slow growing, and they're an exotic tree. Like you don't want to be the one arborist that comes in and goes, oh, we'll just reduce that branch, and then you, like, for whatever reason, you just completely offset a tree that is probably double, triple your own age. Like you just want to do little bits and pieces on these trees, and also be mindful that there's a wasps love it, because I've been done by wasps hard in one of these. Yeah. Well, the good thing is that wasp family no longer exists.
They're older than angiosperms. Angiosperms are flowering trees. Eucalypts, one of the most, in an evolutionary sense, the most recent trees to the world as well, in an evolutionary sense, and in the flowering trees, they're one of the newer flowering plants to the world. But this has as being a gymnosperm, it gets cones, and male cones and female cones. And they have a male and female tree. Which also shows, when I was doing it before, that these will produce a heavy amount of pollen compared to a flowering tree, like a lot more, because it's more of a shot in the dark. You know, that's just wind dispersed. There's no animals coming along and collecting this and then transferring it onto a male cone. It's just wind, so it's about having heaps and then trying to germinate a tree that's close.
Cedrus deodara.
Yeah. That's, yeah. You're taking me back to the 90s, so.
Good land for trees. Don't drop branches.
Pines planted along like coastal strips where people walk through. One, they're strong. They don't fail. Like I rarely see or hear about Norfolk Island pines, Cook Island pines failing because they've grown up and they're exposed regularly to coastal sea breezes. And yeah,
it gets fruit on its trunk, and it's called the sandpaper fig. For good reason. Every Aboriginal community that had this growing in their local area used it for a reason. Take a leaf off. They sharpened or smoothened everything they owned with that. It does the job. You think I'm joking? Rub it on your arm and wait till this evening when it starts to hurt. It's extremely rough. It's a great product for you for yourself. True. That is it. And you can it's even got the fruit on the trunk.
It's actually the only.
So defining features is its sandpaper, and there's its fruit. It's pretty cool. Little red. So its fruit even shaped differently to other fig trees. If anyone wants to come and slightly touch the bark of a mature one, weird. Telling ya, weird. It's like got dirt, a layer of dirt on it. It does, but it doesn't, isn't it? The inside of this tree white, like all fig trees. You cut it down late in the ground, it rots away really quickly. So you'll end up learning about cambium. I think it's got a lot less cambium in it than say an iron bark. The rule, it does just fruits on old wood. It doesn't fruit, like most plants, on this year's growth. It fruits on growth that's usually 3 years and older. But the trunk is where it does most of its time. That's probably one of the better red ones I've ever seen. Plump and ready to go. So yeah, oh, yep, I love it. That's surprising. Possums that don't care.
Podocarpus.
Podocarpus. We'll go for maybe some more detour and I'll get the fruit. We'll drop off and I'll mention a bit of London Plain and Euclid. No, North American changed in England. So that's your London Plain tree. So Platanus hybrida I don't think they can remember its parents, can they? So that tree was one of the trees bred in a nursery setting hundreds of years ago. All tests on that tree shows you that it's one of the most urban tolerant trees you can imagine. It sucks pollution into its leaves, transfers it into its bark, and then sheds that bark when it sheds its leaves every year. So it literally pushes out the toxins. It throws the toxins out, but traps it in the bark, which is then put into the ground. So a bit like they discovered that sunflowers is one of the only things that takes radioactive out of the soil. Yeah, so they'll let Chernobyls covered in sunflowers and then they harvest it and then bury the sunflowers because it's sucking up the radiation to speed up the process. Yeah, so they're a very useful tree in our urban setting and moving forward.
The light coloured orangey.
Yeah, so the one starting to lose its leaves with the big leaves, yeah, London Plain. And then
Sydney a lot. See them on the side of the road in Sydney.
Sydney, yeah. So a massive city tree. And then one of the other massive city trees is your liquid amber. So that's again one of the older, you've got a lily pilly, a liquid amber and a taxodium over there, which also leaves its leaves, but they're as old as this place when it was a teacher's college, so about 1971. Three of the oldest trees on campus.
On that liquid amber on the backside, that big pocket of decay?
Yeah, so...
Is that something that you guys are...
We've factored done work like the Arcaria,
Liquid
there's their
amber.
shape. But this one's had a few faults over the years, as you can quite clearly see, and that's what Tom has brought us over here to show you the socketing and probably the way the wood's reacting.
The wound. So the top one just below that socket or that hollow is occluded quite well. It's probably been, and the one on the side, like you can see like the definitive branch bark ridge and where the cut's been placed. The one below it is starting to occlude, but you see how it's occluding on one side rather than the other. When it comes to pruning, like we're trying to get that kind of plain, uniform, like good circle shape to finish your cut, and we'll touch on that with like your pruning operations. But if you see stuff like on older trees where like cuts have been placed in and they've occluded over, then that should give you an indication as to what the tree will tolerate in terms of if it's recovered from that and it's occluded it quite well, then that's going to somewhat dictate how much the tree will continue to tolerate. But if you bear in mind that like every single one of those cuts is introducing just a pocket of decay into that tree. So there's a limb on the backside that's probably like been pruned off and is quite large. That tree will never fully occlude that wound over, but internally it'll wall off that decay. So, I mean, I've worked on heaps of these because they fail regularly, or not regularly, but like the ones that I've worked on, it's because they've shown consistent failure over time. And I mean, being a deciduous tree, they're probably more prone to like seasonal variation as opposed to like your eucalyptus species and species endemic to Australia. So like in Europe with your pruning programs, they'll be more attuned to the seasonal variation in terms of like the variation between temperature, sunlight, like whether there's snowfall. We're more like the species that we've got are more like just they're trees that are tolerant of drought, more or less constant drought conditions, just because of how hot it is here. So, yeah. Following on.
Taxodium, thank you. Distinctum, I can't, yeah, I just went through to try and find its knees, so I couldn't find it. So they're just, it's a heavily mulched garden, so.
From the
Canberra, who said someone go for it?
And what's it
It's even
called?
got a pine cone on it.
What is it called again?
Say it for me.
cones.
No,
Taxodium.
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 I call it taxodium, which is the wrong one.
Taxodium disticum.
Swamp cypress. American tree. Trixie, South Carolina.
There's two trees I know that I can explain that do the same job. So Tristianopsis lorina and Elaeocarpus reticulatus, the blueberry ash that I spoke about earlier, both of them grow on the transition between a woodland forest, like a eucalypt forest, and a closed forest, a rainforest. They're sort of guardians of a rainforest. So if bushfire's pushing through a eucalypt forest, they'll run into this and they'll run into a blueberry ash, and they're both fire retardant trees. So they will slow a fire down as it's hitting a rainforest. PhD in evolution of why that happened, probably, but that is one of the reasons. But why I bring it to you is, Tom was talking about sunburn of trees earlier. So crown lifting, that is one of my pet hates. I hate crown lifting. I hate removing branches from the bottom part of a tree that doesn't need to happen. Obviously in an urban setting, sight lines, safety, we get pushed for it here all the time because someone could jump out of the bush. You know what I mean? There's more cameras, lights and here and that, so it's been slowly got away from. But this is Tristianopsis lorina, the species, the actual one, and there's now a cultivar out called Luscious, and that's it behind us over there. And as you can see, it doesn't quite look real lush for the reasons Tom was talking about before. When it was planted as an advanced tree, and they call it pruning and shaping of a young tree, but they crown lifted it. So they took away the branches from the lower half of the tree, so the trunk got sunburned. So this tree here, being a species, is a little bit more tolerant to it, and fought and hasn't split. You can see like there, that's more just of a natural splitting as it's growing and it's going to peel away. And almost probably because it's sucking up shitloads of water and it's full of turbidity. But if you come and look at the base of this tree, all the stuff you can see on the bottom is just a couple of epicormic growths that are reshooting off the bottom. And you can see what sunburnt did to this tree. So, exposed in the morning, and then in some, obviously in here, the sun comes above that roof line, hits the paving, hits the crushed granite. A rainforest, almost species of tree, cultivar, so not your proper mother tree, it's a cultivar of it, so maybe slightly weakened. Yeah, so sunburnt hits it, the trunk cracks, splits like that, you can sort of see up here. Then you can see the borers. Holes everywhere. This is just a breakdown of the tree. Breakdown of its cambium and its walls. I'm sure Tom will start teaching you about walls at some point. Yeah, trees have walls. Bark's the first one. It's a wall. This whole courtyard was changed. Originally, paths went around the outside and there was two big central gardens, one down here and one obviously where that coffee cart is, and the whole centre precinct. It was the garden. Down there they took everything out. Up here they thought they'd leave this because it's a significant tree. And that's the dilemma we have as arborists sometimes, is then having to deal with the consequences of changing a landscape and leaving something like a flame tree, a rainforest species, in basically a hot, dry environment with its groundwater changed. It's been risen. It's had all its micro associations taken away, all the bark, everything was taken away. The garden was taken away. There was other flame trees here that might have been communicating with. All just cut out, and this, all this work's happened around it, just with a little fence around it. And then when it was let go, these things just shot out of it for nothing. You know what I mean? It's just reacting to then having sun hitting its trunk.
How old would you?
Come in and zoom in on that stuff, and that's weird. Never seen that. That's cool.
How old would you say?
So that flame tree was, look, only 25. I think it was about that size when I started. So that's an example. It wasn't an old tree, but it found its spot and it got to that, and then they took everything away from it.
Did you ever paint the trunk white?
No. Never.
One of the things to consider as well with like your brachychitons, a good example being a slow growing tree. And like a real slow growing tree in the sense that, like you look at if we consider the microcories, the tallow woods out the front of the TAFE, like those massive ones over the walkway, they're only like 30 years old. But they're probably pushing 25 metres tall. And if this tree is only grown this size as opposed to that one in the period of time that Aaron's been here, like the decisions that you make in terms of pruning or advice that you're going to give, like it is one of those, you can only impact a tree for a small part of its lifespan. So that's, like with regards to say removing is different, because removing a tree, that's the tree's death sentence. So you can kind of like use that as an opportunity to do whatever rigging or do it in the most efficient way possible. But if you're expected to take care of a tree, the decisions you make are going to impact this tree well beyond when you've probably moved on to a different career. So I guess, yeah, it's a I gave advice on one recently that is to be removed because of an included co-dominant stem bark ridge. But then the dude I was talking to, who got me to do like the data collection on it, like can accurately say that the tree was 40 years old. So I felt pretty shit house about it. Like not like getting too hippie about it or anything, but like because it had an included union, and that was the justification to get this tree removed for development going forward. Like you've just pretty much made a decision on a tree that was around before I was born. So that's like, yeah, again, holistically, things that you need to consider. So
Off-seeded. Touch the leaf. Tell me what it is. Defining feature. Sandpaper. Touch it here because that's it. You're done. You'll know that is the sandpaper thing. Because if you're ever looking at a tree and going, I wonder what it is. That's why you always touch a tree. Touch it. Don't think, should I touch it? Touch it. You won't learn unless you touch it. Touch it. Screw it up. Smell it. It just botanic names. You know there.
Cabbage.
But you know. Stoner. Put a pile of rocks in the garden. There was water going through the window. We've dug all the rocks away from the window. And now someone's come and poured just another shitload more there. I'm going to have to ask the boss how that appeared. That's all. Trying to just, you know, spotted gum or Citriodora from the trunk. Then look up. Do a guess first and then look up. And then tell me which Casuarina this is. That's the trick. That's why I like that. Yeah, tell me what
It's because they don't like
It's because they don't touch.
So there's
Okay, does anyone want to go in with...
there's both.
Well, oh, correct, there's both. So what's this one? Correct. Yeah. Making it hard. I can't even tell with that one, I'd have to see the leaves, but correct. You've seen the trunk looked a bit different and you both, then you all looked up. So trunk and then looked up and you saw that it had fine leaves and you didn't even have to go to the crunching to see if it smelled like this. Oh, and when I was saying about the native tamarind, they are a gorgeous thing. And like, yeah, you can feel like, in there, have a little feel of that. It feels like a pool table. Beautiful velvet. Looks like deer. Dog can get on a deer there. Native tamarind. So again, flame tree and Terricornis. Local one, brown trunk. It's actually a good specimen. Punctata. Thank you. Paniculata. Told you it's my worst one. Paniculata. I've got paper bar. They're all Melaleuca twinkling over here. Paper bar, it's just another good spot because the trees are slightly away from us. What fig tree do we have? It was the same one as the one we had all the bolts in. And it's the fig tree with the tiny little leaves. Billy, well done. So you've looked at revision notes up. Bay. They're like your two like your rainforest ones that are local to us here in the Illawarra and stuff. And then it's your hills figs, your landscape one. It doesn't come from Wollongong, it comes from North Queensland and further tropical. And then that's your other fig tree we learnt, but that's where you can actually use it as a feature tree. So you just, most of the time you won't see that. So sandpaper figs don't get used as an ornamental tree very often, but I used one there. And when I say I used it at self-seeded and I let it go. And it's the biggest one I know of. It's the lushest one I know of. It's obviously been pruned to get it away from that light. But yeah, that's what a sandpaper fig will do in a decent soil with decent water with full sun. Trunk too. Pretty cool.
Is that fruit edible?
Yeah, I just said it's taken me 20 years to find one that looked really yummy, and I just ate it over there. And it was one that was from out on the stem, so, and it was big and red. I rarely see them. Yep. So that blackbutt's as old as all the other trees on campus, a 40-year-old tree. In the middle of this garden up until 3 years ago was a massive Eucalyptus scoporia. So it was suppressed. So sometimes you got to think, when Tom was talking about why things are why they are, and you're like, you might come in to be assess a tree like that, and you don't know what previous things have been going on here. So why is that tree on a lean going towards the south? Why is it suppressed? Why is it sick? And you would have not have known that there was a massive gum tree on this side of it. So when you're doing a tree report or thinking about why you're assessing a tree in a certain way, one of the best things to do is to maybe try and start with the homeowner or the client you're dealing with, say it's a university, and get the history of the site and the history of the local surrounding area, because it really is your best starting point. What are they? Potted gum. What are those two then? Someone was talking about a deciduous fig. You used to time these questions? Deciduous fig? So I specifically asked when this building was built, this is actually a significant building to all of humans of the world. This building will save someone's life that you know in your lifetime. It's the Molecular Horizon building. It's a microscope in there that's going to just, it's changing the medical industry. It will. Someone will be saved because of that building. Another building, $40 million building or something. But yeah, when they did this site, you've seen all the fig trees that were in here today, and we didn't have the deciduous fig, which is one of our local figs, Ficus superba. So we got him put in. So that's Ficus superba.
Oblique.
So closely related
What a
to lily
house,
pilly. Rainforest tree, really big broad dome. Perfect spot for it. But you guys are gonna see that. All different types of it, our lily pillies, there's thousands of types of lily pillies. This is one of the new faves to get ones with pink new growth, green new growth, yellow new growth, a bit more of a dome, a bit more of a column. That's one of the new ones they're all playing with. We just stopped because it's a bit of a weird spot because we're bringing in some new trees in the horticulture industry. So they're Elaeocarpus mundi. So closely related to the blueberry ash, but they're from Queensland. Lucky gorgeous, aren't they? It's a pretty tree. So we just put a few in there. It's undifferent. So I try to keep it, as I was saying, endemic to Wollongong only.
Do they grow bigger than the blueberry?
Yeah, huge. Big tree. Yeah. I've got them there because I want to completely shade the ring road. My goal before I leave is to shade the ring road. Roads last longer. Shaded. Little grove of my favourite pea tree, Eucalyptus paniculata, and one blackbutt. And then can you see all that ascending, the drip tip on that? So those two eucalypts across the road have got the bit of orange in the trunk. So they look like Pterodocornis, but they've got the orange in the trunk. So they're punctata. I finally got one right for you today. So they're punctata. Look a lot like Pterodocornis, but have some orange in their trunk. And then if you want to get further on identing, go and collect some fruit. Have a look at the leaf, top and bottom. So, anyone know what that tree is? That is a turpentine. So closely related to a eucalypt, but not a eucalypt. It's in the Myrtaceae family, but it's evolutionary, a little bit older. So come and have a look at its defining features. So, have a look at the fruits, very unique. Yeah. So, a defining feature, if you find a leaf on the ground or in the tree, it is a two-sided leaf. Again, not the same on either side. And the underside is what we call tomentose, Latin for white. That's a defining feature of the turpentine. Is its growth habit, often multi-trunked, a broad dome. The fruit are very unique. I think they look like a little space saucer or something from the Jetsons. You're as old as me. Yeah, and the two-toned leaf, but it's got an upside and downside. Yeah.
Resilient to water.
Yeah, so
Worms.
yeah.
They use it in building piers.
Yeah, this is the one they cut. Or the whole of Sydney Harbour was built with turpentine. What that one was lined with recycled turpentine.
Yeah, resilient to water parasites.
Yeah, but two trees. There's a photo up on our wall in the building. Oh, they take it down. But there's only one of two trees that was here. Every other tree you've seen has been planted. This was a grass dairy paddock at one point, and there was two trees. But the whole creek line, nothing. All the trees you see over there, that's all regrowth. People would think it was forest that wasn't cut down or remnant. No, everything's regrown. Yes, it regrew in a forest setting and wasn't cut back down, but this tree and another turpentine that's way up near a multi-storey car park at the other end of campus, the only two trees on a photo of this place that we do have from 1963, I think. And literally nothing. Get in, touch it, turn the leaves over.
Is that a baby stuff?
That's the tree we just looked at. It is. It's turpentine. It's a baby. And again, when I was explaining to you that orange is predominant in senescent leaves in Australia, perfect example. Orange just tends to dominate our dying leaves in the bush. And you can see it in the next one. Someone touched that one. It's soft and prickly. This tree and the health of it. It's Casuarina glauca. It's quite sick. Go in and have a bit of a closer look because you're here not just to do ident. You really start at the so a visual, what is it, VTA? You can start them in either two ways. In my opinion, you either start them at the ground, looking at the roots first, or start at the tip of the tree. I like to start with the roots because it's where most problems start with. But yeah, that tree's got a lot going wrong with it. Have a little look at it. Sort of work out what you think's going wrong with it. And then why. Do you do anything?
So this ties into like what we're going to be with climbing as well when we're doing our VTA prior to climbing and assessing the tree. Like if you look at stuff like this, you got all this big pocket of decay on the backside.
Yeah. So we're just bring too hard on it for years.
Yeah, they love.
Right. If you consider, like this tree, you still climb it, but if you're going to rig as your method, like you almost got to think about like the decay's on this side, so you want to rig so your forces have been applied laterally to the pocket of decay, whereas if you start snatching stuff out on the backside, you're going to apply so much force that the tree's going to go with the rigged piece. But I mean, like, as Aaron's saying, you look at this whole strip of decay that's making its way up. Did that start from that poorly included union right at the top and make its way down? Or did it start from the ground? Irrespective, that's there. So the tree's already trying to use a lot of its energy to wall off internally this decay. And you just make your way up and you see pretty much like that union or this bolt runs the whole length of it. And whether that's occurred like from a portal of infection that's opened up at the top
come back,
and made
did
its
it,
way
Jody?
down.
I find spikes are a good way to tell how
One in there.
sturdy it is.
Yeah. That's what it initially say.
Through?
And now I'm just using it as
People,
an education.
like someone say use a sound mallet.
It's not dead.
That would be.
Like, just
Falling on any
give
of
it a
Like it up,
kick.
you,
Yeah.
you
day
know pretty
going
quickly if
brown.
it's not worth climbing
Yeah.
up.
So one of the other options as well is like if you were to tie in, say you shoot a point into there with the second climbing system and then come up here on your primary, at least you're spreading your load that you're applying to the tree between 2 points rather than just putting all your force into this tree. And also you've got a redundancy that should this tree fail during its removal, well, at least you might go for a massive swing, but it's better than riding it into the ground.
Promise you that.
So, like a hero, you just ride it like
Throw the saw though.
like a
Throw the
translucent.
saw and grab
Just
one
jump
and go
before you
for
hit the ground, sir. That's what you got to do.
That,
It wasn't a big one,
is
6
that
metres. and I
decay
hit the ground,
started from
head
the
across
ground
the
work
slope
way up,
before.
or is it
Yes.
come from?
Yes. So
Neck out, hit my
I'd
elbow.
say all the damage started with damaging this trunk on this side.
Someone's hit it. Oh.
Yeah. Look at that. Mad. Look at that. Callousing.
She's trying to grow over, mate.
She is.
Give
really
it a
well.
go.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's your callus, but I've been wanting to see how that callus was going. So. And as I was just explaining to Zach, why it's here is what I'm doing now. It's teaching me things.
Yep.
I'm learning from this tree, so I'm learning how reaction wood works. I'm learning how a glauca can tolerate mistletoe, trunk rot, pathogens. I was just saying to Tom, spray this garden probably too much Roundup. I don't like hand weed. Jody's cracking hand weeder. I hate it. I don't. I love hand weed. But it's hard. We don't have the time, so I spray these ring road gardens get sprayed with Roundup. And one of my colleagues pointed out to me that with the tree being sick and spraying Roundup under it, I don't personally think it would have affected the other trees as well. But it's just another thing to think about. Yeah, so I use it as a, how long is it going to live? How big can a mistletoe one get? Like you look up it, it's got mistletoe all through it. Yeah, little. It's size that big. As I said, it had inside there was a 2AF Velcro size big dray in the middle of it, which had the ringtail family in it. They had 3 babies and a mum and an auntie. In the end, when I peered into it, it had five possums in it.
Do you know if this species of mistletoe creates a fruit that you can eat? Because I know the species of mistletoe where I am, you can actually eat the fruit on them.
Yeah, I have heard that. I've heard, I think you can eat a lot of them. The jelly fruits.
Yeah,
Because the birds eat them to,
yeah.
yeah. So we all did know how they pass us through them. You've all seen the data documentary. They pull it and it sticks to the branch, and then it is remarkable though how that root will just find a little crack in the, like we might not even be able to see with our eyes, it'll go through and manages to pierce the bark and get in
Yeah.
to the phloem and cambium. That's the male cones, and you all know what a female, we've all had a big shot and shot them at each other. Some people been
I find the pool balls work the best.
Yeah, but again, it's a pine, so it's got the male and female. So to me, that's fairly obvious. Very long, pretty thick. Not as long, thinner.
Spotted going with a little bit of a softener.
Really did Angophora maculata, the spotted gum. So this is Angophora costata. So it's your apple, argyle apple, is it? across the road here.
Starter.
Another 2 of them. So they grow through Menai, through the sandstone area, and they get a pink trunk.
That's the costata, yeah.
Yeah. So Angophora costata. That's the baby. They're 3 that have started to come up. And I'll just show you what I mean by an orangey pinky bark on a bit more mature one as we go through. And I did say the word before, one of my favourites was Canaliculata.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, and that's it there. So they look like Pterodocornis, those 2 trees together, but they're Canaliculatas. So that's why the gum trees can be fun too. So that's it. It's darker, almost got some pink to it, yeah. Off red, dried up blood. There's a little skinny trunk across the road. But that's an Angophora. Again, gum tree. There's again your ironbark that we were talking about earlier. Paniculata. With a bobcat. Someone backed up a bobcat. So Angophora costata. So it looks like you spotted gum in a lot of ways, but it prefers sandstone. Has a different shaped fruit. Oh yeah. So Tom, your Angophora and your opposite leaves and your eucalypt and your alternate leaves, shall we? So Angophora, I said they're both gum trees. To start, so you go, oh, is this a spotted gum? Because some of them are a bit grayer. If you pull it off, Angophoras have opposite leaves, not alternate. So they're straight across from each other instead of being alternate. Defining feature. Oops, sorry. Yeah, that's why you don't see any of our juvenile trees that aren't in cages. We can't plant a tree with coastal Banksia, Banksia integrifolia, yellow candle flower. Can someone tell me what's defining about the leaves? Don't see anyone going close to it. Touch it. Smell it. Take the flower.
What was it? Banksia what?
Integrifolia, coastal Banksia. We've already got waves. That's as big as they get. So,
Swap Banksia.
I don't call it a tree, I call it a large shrub. They don't have a yellow flower, do they? It's a lot bigger, and they're actually usually quite orange when they first start. Like, again, it's pretty hard not to, but it's furry. And as leaves go, like that's thick. That's thick leaf. Won't see many of them. Might be the only time you do see one. The only other one I know of is in Mum's backyard. They're quite temperamental. There was about 20 planted here and they're the only 2 left. Hence this. So that's quite sick. So spinulosa, Banksia spinulosa, the cultivar, something candles it's called. I love it. If it wasn't so rainy, I'd be sucking on all these flowers for the nectar. These are one of the ones you can just have a glass of water and in the middle of summer they're dripping the nectar, just drip it in the water and it's cordial. But just shows you Banksias and soils. Like the sun going is too fertile is usually the problem. Banksias don't want too much phosphorus. So there's probably a bit too much phosphorus happening in there, whereas that little patch of ground is denuded of it. So it's love and life, this one. Yeah, again, that's fully mature. Over here again, so your other paper bark. So it only comes from one spot in Australia, Mascot, the airport. That's where it comes from. Grows all over the place now, but it loves water. They actually perform best in a swamp environment. Another good example of a Seligna, but with no sock. Good tree though. Yes, everything's upright. Doing well, Clark, doing well. Yeah, it's sooty. Well, so that's just several things have got to get it to this point. If we're getting close again, when I've moved, you've got ants moving up and down. So the tree would have got scale on it to start with. And the ants are protecting the scale because the scale pump out a little bit of sugar on their back.
They farm it.
Yeah, they farm each other. They look after each other. So the ants will then protect the scale. But then when a tree gets sick from that, and its reserves of its immune system really gets weakened, then other pathogens can come in. So sooty mold just came in, and it's got all over the tree, which is then, blocking up its pores. It gets on its leaves. It's blocking its stomates, so it's not going to photosynthesize properly. So go into a severe decline. A simple fix for that would be to spray it with soap a few times. It'll probably come good. We tried to help it the other day by just removing the vine that was growing up it. It was only been cut out of it a couple of days ago. But yeah, look, even at this point, going round and systematically removing all this would probably be the best thing for it.
Just the ants off.
Yes, and give it even a light scrub with a brush, get rid of all the black with soap, and it'll probably come back. Fucking ant.
They're protecting it.
It's oldest and broadest of the ironbarks across the road there.
They almost felt for all
Significant tree. You can see, you get under there, it's gnarly, all the branches are twisted. Here's a tree that, why is it still there?
Sometimes
you got priorities. Oh yeah, you tell me. Mimosa folia or something. But doesn't. A lot going on in that tree. It's got a little bit of Botrytis in it, but mostly Seligna, but not healthy. It's got a weird, different canopy. It's got like a perfect top canopy, then sort of nothing, then a bit of something, and as you can tell, there's shit going on in that trunk, isn't there? So if you want to look at, so that's another tree that probably got a minimal lifespan. Each triangle represents a tree. There's 4,500 trees on it. That's obviously an aerial shot of the campus. The blue triangle's a new tree. Otherwise, it's colour-coded in a priority sense. Red meaning urgent, dark green meaning negligible in its priority of needing work. So an example would be an orange triangle. Not too many left over these days, but I know there's one on the expressway fence line here. And sometimes they're as funny as what this one is. So that's orange, so it's obviously priority over a yellow. You click on the number, and this is what I pay for. So I pay for them to come in and tell me what tree it is, what type of tree it is. They GPS plot it where it is, gets a name, then it gets its age, so it's a semi-mature tree, somewhere between 25 and 50 years old. It gets its height, its diameter at breast height, its structure, hazardous. Its health, good. Its canopy spread in metres, 10 to 15. And sometimes we have groups, say, if I've got a group of bungalow palms, I don't want them, I have to say, basically it costs $7 to $12 for each tree to be assessed very quickly. So it's not a big in-depth one, they sort of pretty quick when they first go through it. But that's where costs just would blow out, like to be ridiculous. if you were to do every bungalow palm when there's 10 in a group, like, he can blow that out to 10 minutes a tree for 10 bungalows, and it's just their one group. So you can actually have them as a group, not or as an individual tree. Obviously, most of individuals. So then it just comes down here and gives you the history of when they were assessed. It was assessed in 2019. It would have been assessed before that, but it sort of just dropped off because of its importance has gone. And then it was reassessed. Last year I had every tree that was yellow on this system reassessed. I think that cost 12 grand. But that's again to keep my liability because I hadn't worked on all the yellows. You saw how many yellow triangles, and there's only me and Kurt. And we're only meant to work as arborists for about 40% of our week. The other 60% of our week, I'm a gardener. I blow paths on Monday, 3 hours, blow. Those two blow more because I had children and I now drop them off. I'd rather blow fucking paths. So then it'll tell me what needs to be done to this tree in their assessment. So in 2021, Tom, a Cert 8 Tom. If you want to hear a wanker talk to a Cert 8 arborist. Fucking hell. Yeah, so he's reassessed it, tree updated. Works have not been completed from the previous ones. Fucking, he just got paid 12 grand to fucking write that. You know what I mean? On pretty much every one of the trees that I hadn't worked on. He's just copy and painted. Tree reassessed, same as before, work has not been performed. But if a branch falls off that, I don't get in trouble. Yeah, so then it goes down to the defects, signs and actions of what needs to be done. They give us a little costing so I can quote against all you fuckers in the world from their quote already. I have a quote of how much that might cost. They're fucking pretty expensive. We do everything well under there. Because we're in-house, obviously, our truck and chipper, and we're federally funded. We don't pay taxes for petrol and shit like that. So it's all a cost saving, and that's how you all operate. You got to make money. So they put $900 on this tree, and then it just tells you what the tree defects are. It's codominant, it's got cracks and splits, it's got dead wood up to 300 to 30 millimeters. So here, when we dead wood, 30 millimeters and above. If it's smaller than 30 millimeters, that could fall out of a tree, hit you on the head, and if you've got a scratch and you're going, and you're bleeding and the stick's there, and we pick it up and we measure it, and it's under that 30 millimeters, I just toss it in the garden and tell you to go away. Because you're not liable, you're not going to, the uni's lawyers will wipe you off the planet, in other words. But it was bigger, means we haven't done it, and then they've got a case. Yeah, so it's got excessive end weight, there's been previous failures, it's slightly suppressed and it has wounds. But then it's got significance as a tree. It's got an amenity value. You will start talking about amenity value. That's a massive thing in our industry because every tree you walk past today is actually in here, is got a circle over it in the map, and is valued. So the fig tree that we stopped for our break, it's got the deck on it. So that's a significant tree with a deck around it, and it's a known tree. The value on that tree is 22 grand, I think. So if you come in and say, as a contractor, and say, there's an electrical cable runs under the drip canopy of this tree, we need to replace it. My first port of call is any damage. I'm taking a photo of that tree. Any damage is caused to that tree from your trench, you owe me $22,000. And there's no arguing it. So they'll go, let's move that fucking cable, eh? And they'll put the cable somewhere else, might bring it in from somewhere. So that's the value of getting an amenity value in our industry these days. It's where you want to go to if you're trying to protect a tree. It's a hard thing to get. But
so how do you get an amenity value on a tree?
Yeah, you have to employ someone like ArborSafe to come in and tell you how much the value of that tree would be worth.
Oh, right.
So what certificate
It's like guesswork, really, though. How much is it worth, do you
What
think?
qualification do they have to be able to say that?
Certified, so I can do that for
Yeah,
you.
right.
Yeah, it's a hard thing. You've got to look at its age, its significance, like its location, its species, its how long it's going to be there into the future. So its amenity value is its value to the community moving forward. Yes. As an attractive shade. Yeah, but it's a way, it's a little tool in our kit that we can fight all the other people who are trying to remove it or damage it. Screen value. So there's a value. Screens, they're the things that you've got to look at. So then it's got the arborist works. It's remove a selective branch. It's a tree on the expressway fence line, and one limb hangs over the expressway that's gone like this, and it's got a bit of a radial twist, a split in it. I wouldn't touch it, but they've told me that I have to do it, and it's just annoying that you can almost see the shadow of the branch there, the white line. We're like, we just want it to go. It's a fucking busy road. It's like that road never stops anymore, so you know what I mean? So, but Kurt's probably going to walk 2/3 of the way out of it, and I'll just walk out there and he'll cut it off. 6 o'clock in the morning. No, it'll be what, probably 8:30 when it calms down, who knows? But that's why it hasn't been done. It's one of those trees, you put a line in it, and it'll, like a lowering line, and it'll probably toe end it back in, but we're also from, I don't know if these are all aware, but from there to all the way, that's going to be expressway to about there.
Oh, they're going to pinch that off.
Yeah, Google Mount Ousley intersect.
When does that start?
Yeah, they've started. They're down there painting the lines and yeah, so we're losing our, basically where we drive in on that little road, then it drives around like that. This ring road is going to go straight, and they're just going to cut through there, and the RTA have told us they're using our access road. And they're building
That'd be great.
the world's a weird place. This triangle there is owned by the schools. It's not owned by the union, it's not owned by the RTA. There's a little triangle there that's owned by Schools New South Wales or whatever.
Wow.
So the RTA just had to throw them $8 million.
Oh.
They went, oh, you can't have it, we're keeping it. And they went, oh, we're going to build our road. And they went, oh, how much is the land worth? Fucking worth shitloads, I don't know. I'm throwing a number out there.
Yeah.
I actually did hear $4 million has changed hands, but that's just people talking shit in this place. Yeah, so they've had to buy that. So yeah, Ousley's we're getting a bypass bridge thing that comes in and drives into the,
Okay.
it's massive. If I had me double screen that I'm meant to fucking have, I'd bring it up for you. So we're losing all this bush, that's all road. Basically that road's coming down here. The trucks are getting their own lane. It's a bridge above everybody, like fucking New York or some shit. If you Google it, you'll just go, fucking hell, it's ridiculous. There's roundabout bridges coming over here from North Wollongong with roundabouts, and we'll have 2 bridges straight into the campus. So if you come from like Sutherland or whatever, come down Ousley, you'll come in your own bridge into the campus over there. It's fucking phenomenal. So yeah, again, so that was an orange tree. So they're all stamped. We were in Central Square today, and we looked at the fig tree. We had lunch at. So it's a yellow. Nothing I can do about it being, that's a medium risk tree. You don't want trees to be medium risk. You want them to be green. I want every tree on here to be green. If they're not green, it means it's causing some sort of works. It's going to have to be done or monitored or... Yeah, so then again, what's it say about that tree? It gives it its number. Its risk rating, it's a medium. It's age, mature. It's 50 years or under. Structure, good. Health, good. Height, 15 metres. Blah, 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 blah. Tree assessed. Maintain 20 millimetre gap between root and deck. So they're advising about, so that the deck, the buttress roots are now pushing on the inside of that deck, and they want me to get carpenters in there to cut the wood to maintain a 20 millimetre gap between the deck and the buttress roots. I'm just letting the buttress roots fuck the deck. We know which one's going to win. I haven't read this one for ages. Area roots growing into unions. Encourage area roots to grow to ground level. So there must be a couple of them growing into the building, and they want me to grab them and hang them out. This is as far as the rubbish style, right? That's Tom again, yeah. Who would have guessed? But then again, it's got the tree defects. It's co-dominant, cross-rubbing branches, damaging infrastructure. Oh, so now they're saying those buttress roots are damaging infrastructure. So that's, you can write what things, make things sound how you want, in a way. Make it sound like it's bad. It's got epicormic growth, which I didn't see it. It's got some included bark, it's got previous failures, and there's some resin and kino coming out of it. So, but again, with its significance, amenity value is always going to be written in there. Attractive landscape feature and dominating the landscape. So you can see that's why things you can write as an arborist, like if you're doing a report or why we keep this tree, you can say, well, this is the only, there's 300 trees in this local area, but this is the tree. This is the significant tree to the park. It's the tree people have an association with. I have an association with 2 trees in Dapto. I grew up in Dapto. Then I moved to Wollongong for 17 years or something, 14 years, somewhere in between.
Its amenity
And then
value seems really small then,
yeah,
compared to how dominating of the area it is.
Yeah, well, so amenity value covers all of those next things to me. The attractive landscape, the dominating of the landscape, and significant due to its age and size and its unique location. Basically, he should have just wrote amenity value. They're all amenity values.
What's it actually valued at?
That's the 22 grand one.
That's fine.
Yeah,
It seems really, really little
it is low,
to.
but that is enough to stop a contractor digging in your drip zone, no, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you go 22 grand, that tree dies, or that branch dies, or that the tree doesn't have to die. The tree just has to be affected by their works, and they pay the whole value of the tree.
Yeah.
So like if 3 different contractors
You've got to get that
came
through court.
through and each of them took a branch off, you'd be getting 60 grand.
No, because you no.
Can't double dip.
No. It's a good theory. Yeah, and so then on here where the last time I worked on it, got a bit of a canopy uplift by JP in 2017. JP's our 3rd arborist. He was my arborist here on campus, but he took a team leading role like mine over at the Innovation Campus. And then we hired Kurt to replace JP, which we're both stoked with because Kurt's a fucking weapon, to tell you the truth. He single line climbs now too. He used just to show me how to do it the other day. Fucking with a little foot loop, knee loop, chest loop. I was just doing this little, that's all I was doing. And I was just chatting to him going, yeah. And then I was like, oh, I was 15 metres up the tree. Like, and I hadn't really used my arm. And I'm just used to, not pressing or anything, but I've just, with my pole belt, like sort of stroll up slowly. It was just, he's SRT or whatever, he's a weapon. Bit like, where's Zach? I've heard Zach's quite good.
Yeah, Zach's pretty fun.
Yeah, just quietly. He's not around, boosting him up anyway. Yeah, I've heard he's someone you'll learn a bit from. Kurt's heard of him. And yeah, he knows what he's doing, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so again on there's a $400 cost on there, and they want me to just remove the dead wooden stubs and selective branch removal. And when they're saying selective branch removal on this one, it means, I know, cut off the branches that might be hitting people in the heads when they're walking on the deck.
So like selective dip pruning kind of.
Yeah, it's more just make it safe. Yeah, and a little bit, but they haven't written and weight reduction, which I would have thought they would have on that, but they didn't. So good. And he did reassess it last year. Yeah. Where's the? If anyone wants to, before he's leave, we'll go just for a small walk and we'll look at this tree here. Because it's a good one. Because you just saw the other ones and it's got a lot of shit written about this one. So I've done aerial inspections on this tree, and so's Arbor Plan. So we even got Nick in on this one after Tom. So Nick's had a write up 16 days after Tom's written. Nick's got on here and had a write as well of my aerial inspection. Okay, now I get it. So I did my aerial inspection last year at the start of October, and then they've put it in here. So aerial inspection in October, report attached. A cavity was observed and inspected in the upper canopy. So bifurcation of the subject tree. This defect was not considered to have compromised the tree structure or integrity. Taken in aerial defects 168. They want me to reassess this in 36 months. So have a look at it again before October 2024. Using this report and images, the baseline. Oh look, they've even bring in accordance with the Australian Standards 4373. Pruning of amenity trees can be remediated at the hazards and risks proposed. What a fuck. God, they can talk some shit. And then, so you can read all that, and on here it says, arborist action works, dead wood. That's it. So they've got written heaps of stuff, but all I've actually got to do now is go back and dead wood it. What a joke. And you can see it's been worked on several times. It was worked on in 2013, it was worked on in 2016, it was worked on in 2001. There was a branch fail in 2013 twice, and some of them have files that you can actually open. You don't need to see that shit. It was waffle. But that is that's as in-depth as a report as I'll get in this format. 2010 there was also a failure. As I said, the blue ones are new trees that were planted, and you can see how comprehensive the fucking thing is. It's the whole place. Why didn't it go out? Fit. Yeah, so it's a lot of trees. And that's that new car park that is across the road you just saw. So
It's an awesome tool.
yeah,
Aaron,
it's a bit of a statistic builder. Yeah, you're right.
So I've got to shoot off because I've got to do a couple of things. But so the boys are pretty much scheduled to leave at 2:30.
Yep, that's just about to walk them out and just show them one tree as we leave.
Yeah,
Perfect. That's perfect example. And you can see how we tried to save it from our $60 million building. If we didn't get the environmental conditions we've got in the last 18 months, I would have said it would have died. But I've got lucky. One of the main reasons was after all the works were complete, I had a fence put around to about 2 metres past its drip canopy, so nothing got done inside there. It was looked after perfectly. And then it was after it was all packed up, I'll show you what they did to it. This was their little inn. And they forget gardeners start at 6 o'clock, and as I was driving in the ring road, I was like, that looks like a Australian's excavator moving underneath the tree at about 10 to 6 in the morning. And they decided they want to put in the uplighting that I was talking about before. So they tried to sneak in. Well, they did. So after protecting the tree for 3.5, going on 4 years from development, they said I was driving in that ring road one morning, and this is how valuable they are. Someone can try and find it. There's lights here somewhere in a semicircle just here that shine up under the canopy at night. So after saving it, they came in, and a third of the tree's root system was just a trench, just cut like a smile. That wide, 4 feet deep, with electrical cables laid through it with uplighting. So they're there somewhere. So there's all uplighting.
Do they work or they're all covered up?
Well, that's it. I haven't been in here for a while. So. Trees for this building, and I was managed to save those 4, them 2, and that 1. So 7 trees that were proposed to be removed were the only 7 I could save out of the 146 in here. And that was just because I said these two trees actually have an association with that tree. When I said there was only 2 trees on campus in the photo, the other turpentine is just through there, and it is disputed that that tree's in the photo. There's a bit of what looks like a tree. Is it a bit of a shadow, a bit of a stick? So that tree was probably in that photo in 1963, and it was like 2 meters tall and just germinated. You can just see, but I'm like, is it? Is that you? Yeah, it probably was. It looks like it's in the right sort of spot. But this, underneath all this was demountables. Buildings. We've all been a demountable at school at one point. This was all under years old. You know what I mean? That's a fucking big tree, 60 years old.
80 years old.
80, thanks for that. Yeah. So it's a fully mature tree.
Did you
Yeah,
see
you're right.
the trench that was dug?
I couldn't. Oh, did I see it?
Yeah.
Okay. I pulled up and just
So was
walked
there,
straight
was
over.
there many roots?
Oh yeah, they
Yeah.
dug through arm size all the way.
Arm size all the way
Yeah,
through.
yeah, probably 20 of them.
So
at least.
feeders.
Oh yeah, they hammered it. Yeah, and you can almost see like the dead tips on here. There's a bit missing out of there. Like even that one stub there, that was a live limb 2 years ago. You almost see that bits missing in there, and you can definitely see that it doesn't have the vigour it should.